Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, the voice of Hera on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Living Force podcast. Know the code.
Welcome to the Living Force podcast.
Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
A Youtini production. Episode 15, The Foundational Five.
We need a statement, not a manifesto.
On this episode, what are your top 10 Star Wars novels? We check the tweets.
Submit your blaster for inspection.
Also, what are the Foundational Five books?
A good question. For another time.
And now, here are your hosts.
But I want them alive. No disintegration.
Dr. Corey Helton, Eric Eilerson, and Dr. Charles Hankel.
Yeah, being a doctor.
I was gonna say, and yesterday I was technically off and volunteering to help put the set in the truck because we're going to another place, and then this, I think it had to be over 50-pound, 2-foot diameter moon went falling off a thing while I'm standing on a ladder and hit me in the face because it wasn't secured properly. So I just heard them say, "I don't think that's probably Eric heads," and then it hits me in the face, my glasses fall off, and I just hold on to the ladder, because I'm like, okay, if I stay on the ladder, I'm going to be okay. So I don't fall off, my vision doesn't go black, I don't see stars, anything like that. So,
you just died.
Exactly, I instantly died. And then I calmly just got down off the ladder, found my glasses, sat in a chair, and people come over like, "Are you, ooh," and I go, "Okay, that's not great." So I put my hand where I think I got hit, and it hurts a little. I pull it back, and there's just blood, because it's a head wound, right? So I'm like, okay, there's Kleenexes there. I'm like, hey, can someone get me like a paper towel? Like, very calm, very just like, hey, this sucks. The guy that dropped the thing, I'm like, hey man, you're fine. Are you okay? Are you good? Because I don't want him to feel bad. And we got a wet paper towel. Eventually it stops bleeding, and I have literally a perfect X at the edge of my eyebrow where it just hit me. And did concussion protocol. I couldn't drink a beer all night, which was frustrating because everyone went out afterwards. But yeah, then I woke up today and I didn't have a headache. I didn't even need ibuprofen or anything. But it was that moment of like, nice. Man, these glasses, because it's about half an inch away from my eyeball, and I'm like, these glasses really did a great job not letting me go blind. So
I feel like there are a lot of jokes that we could make about this.
I mean.
So you got hit in the face
with the moon. There's a moon piece specifically. I got hit with the moon.
That's no moon. That's no moon, Eric.
No moon. There are lots of jokes.
I got vector primed.
Already made the joke earlier that we didn't have recording, unfortunately, that you basically got chewied
in the face. But you know what? We are here. You had a crazy shift. You had a terrifying shift. I got hit with a giant set piece, but we're here because we love the Living Force podcast, episode 15. And
I'm not going to lie, I didn't love the Living Force podcast, episode 15, last night at like 4 in the morning or something when I was like trying to go to sleep and there was stuff happening in our Slack. In fact, that's why I'm so late, because I'm like asleep in the call room. I'm like finally getting to sleep, and I can't put my phone on silent because they might have to call me, right? So I had to, I couldn't. I still have not figured out the great way to like mute notifications on either Slack or Discord.
Oh, Slack's super easy. So what happens?
I'm going to play with it and do it, but like I haven't figured out how to do it on Discord either. So what happens is I get in the middle of a situation in which that it's really pissing me off, and I just log out. Okay, so I logged out of Slack and I forgot to log back in. So Eric, you texted me, and I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder it's been so quiet all day. Because I uninstalled it last night, or logged out last night.
Yeah. Well, luckily for us and for you listeners, he logged back, and his name is Tired But Willing, Dr. Corey Helton. Welcome officially back to the land of the living, man.
Willing is a strong word, man. I just did a 24-hour shift yesterday, and I haven't recovered yet. I'm going
to do what I can for you by forcing positivity to an almost artificial extent. And we also have Dr. Charles Hankel. Hey, buddy.
Hey. Oh, good to be here as always.
Good to see you. And I am Eric Eilerson.
Corey.
Yeah. Here. To medicine.
Cheers, everybody.
I'm ready to get paid more than we get paid now, because this is the worst part.
I mean, that's how I'm going to feel for the rest of my life, if that helps. I'm always ready to get paid more, but I have a way less stressful job than you.
Yeah.
But you know what?
You know.
Every week, we get to lead those stressful lives and come talk about Star Wars for a little bit and pretend that everything is fine just for this hour.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Everything is fine. I love that the meme of the dog with the room just burning all around him. That's pretty much how I feel.
This is fine. This is great. But before we get into a little bit of meat for this week for you fine folks, I want to touch on our last week that we've had, because we had a really fun social week this week. A lot of things were going crazy in real life, but Star Wars Twitter, as always, was a bastion of greatness and fun. I feel like we've been having more interaction with you guys every single week, which we super appreciate, and I got a feeling...
That's awesome.
After last week's episode, Corey, you mentioned the tiers of books that you have. Your tier 1s, tier 2s. We played a little game. We ranked some books. And I just got in this mood where I'm like, you know what? I should rank my top 10 canon books. Just for fun. So I did that, and I threw them out on Twitter. And man, a lot of people tweeted back their own list. It was so much fun. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes here to go down the top 3s of a couple people. So I'm not going to go through all 10, and I want to get your guys' initial thoughts on them and see if we have some really smart listeners or if we really got to do some work. All right?
Idiots. If they're so idiots.
So first of all, yes, we love you all. All books are subjective, except Thrawn Alliances is bad. So first of all, we had Dylan Sasser at Dylan Sasser, friend of the show. He's tweeted in a bunch. His top 3 are Lost Stars, Inferno Squad, and Dooku Jedi Lost, which I thought was
strong choices there. I've not read Inferno Squad. That's one of the more controversial. Ooh. That's kind of like probably a top 10 book that I know I haven't read. I don't know why. I haven't gotten around to doing it. I think mainly because the campaign in Battlefront 2 irked me so much that I have a bad taste in my mouth about the whole.
Yeah, because you wanted that dark side. You wanted a lot more Imperial stuff, which is all that book. She doesn't turn in that book, so I think that you might like that.
Yeah, that's true. It's on my list. Good choices there. Dooku, Jedi Lost, and Lost Stars are both
fantastic. We also have Sarah Haas at SEH221. She has Bloodline at number 1, which I thought is excellent. Lost Stars at number 2, and Leia, Princess of Alderaan at number 3. It is a Claudia Gray sweep.
Yeah.
That's solid. Yes. Wait, all right, out of curiosity, do you have their top 10 in front of you, or do you just have the 3?
Not in front of me at the moment, but if you vamp for a second, I can get it.
I'm wondering where Master and Apprentice is. If she's such a big Claudia Gray fan, I mean, maybe she hasn't read... If you're that big of a Claudia Gray fan, I feel like Master and Apprentice would make your top 3. Maybe not, but
I think it would.
All right, I got it right here. Her Master and Apprentice is 7 on Sarah's list.
Wow.
Ooh,
below.
Okay. Interesting.
And I'm going to say this because it's on Twitter. And Sarah, your list is actually really fantastic. I love all your books. Because her number 6 above Master and Apprentice is Queen's Shadow.
What?
That's just gonna.
I love it. I'm so glad that so many people have different opinions on Star Wars books because there's so much variety.
I love it. It's a great list. Sarah, awesome.
What were you gonna say, Charles?
I was just gonna say that our tastes in Star Wars books are definitely different, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what makes this so cool. That's why we need such a vast universe. That all different people, all different stories. There's something for you in there.
Exactly.
And we've talked about Claudia Gray a lot on the show too, because she's basically a superstar. What did you guys both think about Bloodline? That one is pretty lower on my list as far as Claudia Gray goes. In fact, I would actually probably put that one at the bottom of her books personally.
Ooh, I loved it. It's my number 5 in my list overall, my top 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think I would even put it in my top 10.
That's actually one of the first books that really made me love Leia a lot. Because I liked I like the political stuff with Leia, like Senator Leia. I like Castorfo. I think he's a really cool character. And I think it was very much unlike Lost Stars, Master and Apprentice, and Leia, Princess of Alderaan. Because those kind of all have a Claudia Gray feel, which is awesome. But I think Bloodline is definitely the one that feels less like her usual writing style. So I totally get if people don't love it as much. But I really dug it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a confession to make. The only Claudia Gray novels I've read are Lost Stars and Master and Apprentice. I have not read Leia, Princess of Alderaan, or Bloodlines.
Nice. Dude. Interesting. Yeah, Leia. Have you read Leia?
I love it.
Leia is a shockingly good book. It's another one of her... is it the only other young adult book that she's written?
Yes, that and Lost Stars. Yeah, at least in Star Wars.
Yes. And Leia, Princess of Alderaan, goes into Leia and Admiral...
Holdo.
What's her face? Admiral Purple.
Yeah,
from
and our
Last
Lord
Jedi.
and Savior Bail Organa's in that book. So it's ultimately awesome. No, but I'm jealous of you, Charles, because in your world, you still have new Claudia Gray Star Wars novels to read. So how exciting.
If only I had the time.
Maybe someday. But you know who else did have the time is at Phasma Forever, who we might as well assume number one was Phasma. And number 2, Ahsoka. Number 3, Rebel Rising, which were all super good books. I wouldn't put them quite that high for me personally, but
I like
them all quite a lot.
Phasma is great. Ahsoka is one of those kind of controversial books that you either see people love it or they hate it. And like I love that. I've seen people call it Ahsoka Farms.
Yeah, it is very. But so is Kenobi. You know, Kenobi's Kenobi Farms. Yeah. So like. I'm wearing an Ahsoka shirt right now. I'm wearing my Her Universe Tano shirt, so I gotta love it.
That's such a good point, Eric. I never even thought about that. Kenobi is one of my favorite Star Wars books in general, and Ahsoka I didn't really like. Like the last like 10% was awesome, and the first like 90% I was just like,
yeah, it's not one of my favorites. I think
something happened.
As far as E.K. Johnston books, I actually liked Queen's Shadow. Depending on the day, maybe a little. I don't know. They go back and forth for me.
I definitely liked Ahsoka better than Queen Shadow, and she gets her lightsabers in that book, which
it's
is
dope as hell.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think that's that big of a spoiler because that's pretty common knowledge, I think. But yeah, if you like Ahsoka as a character, you should definitely check out the 100% because she gets like her the whole scene in which she gets her white lightsabers. There's like a whole bunch of cool stuff for like crystal lore, and it's really good. We've talked about it a little bit.
Beautiful. We also have Alderanian Rose at Alderanian R, who I was with on an episode of Friends of the Force that just dropped this today, actually, as we're recording, who is a fantastic member of this community. Her top 3, we've said a couple of them. Leia, Princess of Alderaan, number 1. Bloodline, number 2. And Alphabet Squadron, number 3, which I love. Nice. The Alphabet Squadron love in there, which we talked about on that episode specifically, if you want to hear more about her and my opinions on that. She also had a lot of love for the Servants of the Empire and the Rebels books. The like more younger readers' books, but we're in her top 10.
Yeah, I've not read those, and I've heard really great things about the Rebels books.
Yeah, like Ezra's Gamble and a few other ones in there, so I might have to go back and check those out. Speaking of that same show, we have Brad Whipple, who is the host of Friends of the Force, at Brad_Whipple, or at Friend of Force. He's got Lost Stars, Master and Apprentice, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, another Claudia Gray sweep, just in a slightly different way. What the Force, the show themselves, at WT Force Show. Number 1 was Legends of Luke Skywalker.
Wow.
I can't believe that. That's one of the books that people complain more about.
I know. I was shocked. I haven't read it, but they wrote hard. We talked on Twitter back and forth a couple times, and they really made a good case for it.
Yeah. And then I haven't read that one yet either. I don't know about you guys, but like I've like personally actually avoided the 2 books in canon that I've avoided because I just won't pick them up if I'm looking for a new one to read. Is both Legends of Luke Skywalker and
Heir to the Jedi.
Heir to the Jedi. Yeah.
No, same for me.
Heir to the Jedi.
Just, guys? Is Luke just really hard to write?
Maybe so.
I think that might be a tough thing. Maybe he needs because he's at this kind of legendary status. Maybe when we finally get more books of him between 6 and 7, maybe that'll be a better book to write because it's a little more full of conflict.
Maybe he'll be in what's the Resistance? What's the Resistance Reborn?
Oh, no, he's dead. That's between 8 and 9. Oh, yeah, Force Ghost.
But maybe as a Force Ghost,
maybe
or some shit,
he'll be in the Rise of Kylo Ren.
Yeah, very true.
Right?
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. Luke was hard to write in Legends too. He was a super emotional, whiny kind of character in a lot of ways.
I think everyone sees Luke in a certain way, so like no matter how you write him, at least 30% of people aren't going to like it.
Well, I feel like you relate to. He changes so much from episodes 4 through 6 that like you probably, when you think Luke Skywalker, you think of him at like a certain time period along the way, and so like if he's written at a different time, he's going to seem entirely just wrong to you.
It's this character arc, and it's such a uniquely intense arc for Star Wars. I love it. And so for number 2 and 3 on What the Force, they had Bloodline again, more love for that, and Dooku Jedi Lost again, which honestly I didn't even think about that when I made my list, and I'll go over that at the end. But I'd probably refigure Dooku somewhere in my top 10 as well. I freaking loved that.
Yeah.
Then we had, last 2, we had Julian Kratinsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. At J. Kratinsky. Number 1, they broke the rules a little bit. They said original Thrawn trilogy, which is not canon.
That's allowed.
That's okay.
You can say trilogies.
And then number 2, Master and Apprentice, and then Bloodline again for number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And to round us out, Abigail Barletta at Barletta Abigail. Number 1 was Tarkin, which I was surprised.
I loved Tarkin.
Haven't read yet. My girlfriend calls it Bunny Slippers is the name of the book because I've told her that story about Peter Cushing wearing bunny slippers, so that's his name forever.
Yeah, that's right. That is hilarious.
And hilariously enough, she loves Tarkin so much because the first time she ever encountered him was in Lost Stars because she read that book before she even saw the movies. So
Holy crap, really?
So in that book, he's kind of like really nice to the kids and is really a great guy. Yeah. So she's like, I love this man. I'm like, no, but oh well.
Tarkin is great. It's an absolute. Have either one of you guys read
I read the first bit of it, but it was in that weird paperback that had that and A New Dawn in it. And it was unwieldy to carry around, honestly, which hurt it for me.
It's like his whole origin story, basically. Like he grows up on this really cool planet that's got a really cool like rite of passage to become an adult, and it's a great book. I loved it. And Luceno is like my favorite. It's
your dude,
author,
absolutely.
So I'm a little biased.
And to round out Abigail, after Tarkin, she had Lords of the Sith, number 2, and then 3 was a mixture of the Thrawn and the Bane trilogies.
Any surprises in these lists for you guys?
I mean, I'm surprised. Legends of Luke Skywalker was a surprise for me, for sure. Tarkin was a surprise for me just because I feel like no one talks about that book, so I didn't expect that. I loved all the love for Leia, Princess of Alderaan was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was actually what I was going to say. Is like there's more of that in these top 3s, and I didn't know that was as popular as a book by Claudia Gray personally.
Yeah,
so
but I thought it was great.
Very interesting.
Yeah, some excellent ones. And to compare, I had my list, so I'm going to share my list with you guys, and I want you to roast me as you feel appropriate here. All right?
Oh, it will.
So occur. I'll go from the bottom up. I'll switch it up. So my number 10 was Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad. Also, these are all canon. All right. Number 9, Solo: A Star Wars Story.
I thought that'd be higher.
Right?
Okay.
A lot of good books, that's the thing. 8, Dark Disciple.
I respect that.
Choice.
7, Leia, Princess of Alderaan.
Okay.
6, the Aftermath trilogy as a whole.
All right.
5, Bloodline. 4, Most Wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I like that.
3, Alphabet Squadron. 2, Master and Apprentice. 1, Lost Stars.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good list. It's not bad. Some controversy in there. I wouldn't put Aftermath in my top 10.
Or Alphabet, I would assume.
Trilogy. Yeah, I wouldn't put Alphabet in there either.
Yeah.
And the sleeper, honest to goodness, I feel like the book that we talk so much about that I just didn't see that much discussion about online as compared to other canon releases is Most Wanted. So good job putting that in the top 5 because it belongs there.
Yeah.
We rave about Most Wanted all the time in this show because it's such a great
seriously. And it's one of those that whenever it comes up on Twitter, you always see people go like, oh yeah, I love that book. But it's kind of always an afterthought.
It was shrouded in the controversy of Solo is the problem.
No, it is an excellent book. So before we get to a couple more excellent books, because I don't think I said it at the top of this show, but as you may have noticed in the title of this show, the purpose of this episode is our foundational 5 books at Youtini, because we've mentioned that a lot of times in this show. We have the foundational 5, and this is where you should start. And I think there's really a need for us, for our new listeners and people that may not have been to Youtini.com yet, to go down what are the 5 books we say you should read first in Star Wars and why they're important. So I want to hit those in a second, but before we do, guys, I'm going to do a little spoiler bit. Not huge spoilers, but we're all...
Let's try to avoid spoilers.
No spoilers. I'm not even going to say spoilers. It's the wrong word. I'm going to do a little more of a preview. How about that? A little more... Tease.
It's a tease.
Because as of this episode dropping, tomorrow on Youtini.com, we will have our full spoiler-filled review of Thrawn Treason. So I just wanted to get the 3 of us to kind of update our initial thoughts that we had last week, to kind of give everyone a tease of what that vibe might be. So, Corey, I'm going to throw it to you first. Since last week, you've made it a little farther in the book. Have you finished it yet?
I'm basically done. I'm on the last chapter, but I was just so tired when I was reading the last bit, and I couldn't finish it. It was so stupid. I don't know. Anyway, I'm basically done with it.
Okay, so what's the tease of your thoughts that will come out in the review? Because as you guys know, our reviews at Youtini compile all of our thoughts together in one united front. But here's a little bit of where we're coming from.
I think I think the Youtini review is going to be more critical than people are probably going to be ready for. You know, we've had a whole lot of sort of behind the scenes conversations about Thrawn as a character, about Thrawn and his sort of transition from Legends to canon, and I think a lot of people have got a lot to say about Thrawn as a canon character and what he brings to canon and what this sort of trilogy even means for the expanded universe as a whole. And I mean, I think it's going to be pretty critical. I don't think I would go as far to say that we didn't like it. I think that we definitely enjoyed it, that most of the team pretty much enjoyed it, but I think we have some criticism of it that I don't think we're too afraid to share. You know, it's always great to have Zahn back in writing. Like he was a superstar in Legends, and we have so much that we owe him for doing so much for Star Wars. But I don't think that necessarily means that we can't have some critical things to say about his writing. So
totally.
We'll
All
see.
right, Charles.
So I have like 50 to 60 pages left. I would be reading the book right now if I wasn't here talking to you knuckleheads. So, you know, don't worry about it. It's fine. But I really like it, honestly, which kind of surprises me and kind of doesn't. It surprises me because I was not a fan of Thrawn Alliances, which a lot of us weren't very big fans of. And in some ways, I can acknowledge that this book is similar to that. But for some reason, it has like that classic Thrawn feel to me that like I know and love. So I'm actually really stoked with what I've read so far. A lot of big things are happening, and I'm sure there's some surprises coming up that I'm not gonna know are coming until I get there. But a lot of the things that are happening that are building up towards the like last act of the story, I think, are really cool things. And if you take a step back and just look at the story and try to remove yourself from maybe some opinions you have about the character of Thrawn, and maybe if you feel like he doesn't serve as much of a purpose, I feel like it's actually a strong story, and that will be my input.
Cool. Yeah. When I first came to Thrawn in Rebels, I really loved him as a character. I enjoyed the old school Thrawn trilogy enough. I think the new Thrawn book, it's not in my top 10, I found out weirdly, but I really do love that novel, and I hated this book so much, guys.
It's so
weird.
shocking to you. Like, I can't. Did you think you disliked it more than Alliances?
No. It's my second. Thrawn Treason is my second least favorite canon novel, ahead of Alliances.
That's crazy. I mean, I would not put it that low on my list. I mean, it would definitely be in the, it would be in the greater than 50th percentile for me. Like this book would. Like it's not. I wouldn't say it's bad.
Yeah.
So to hear you say that you hated it,
I'm excited for our conversation about it because we will do a roundtable with spoilers and stuff. But I have some very specific criticisms of it that'll come out in the review.
Which I think are pretty valid.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like
valid. But I'm I'm with you, Charles. Though I really enjoyed the book. Like I think it's absolutely worth reading, even if we are critical. I want to clarify this because I don't want people. We've had a lot of negative things to say already in this episode, and I don't want people to think that we just
no
the book at all. Because like I think it's absolutely worth reading. Like, it's a fun book. It's worth reading, and I just think we have some kind of specific criticisms. Sort of this is I think our criticisms are probably sort of about the book itself and also sort of about the quote-unquote trilogy at this point.
Yeah, because I think a lot of, again, not to go into to any spoiler territory or to where the book review will end up, obviously tomorrow, but there is a expectation element to it, there is a character element to it writing, so yeah, just basically stay tuned. I believe I think, Charles, you're writing this one, are you not? All right, so Charles,
that's the plan.
That's the plan. So Charles will be writing it.
Out of the hospital long enough if I can finish the book.
So keep your eyes on tomorrow on Youtini.com for our full thoughts, and we'll go into obviously our full spoiler thoughts on the roundtable in a couple weeks.
Yeah, if you haven't figured it out, we usually do the episode about a book approximately 30 days after the book is released, so you have plenty of time to read it before we, ruin it.
Absolutely. So, with that, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from a Youtini member about some cool books, and then we're going to go down our Foundational 5. Be right back.
Hello there. I'm Meg, and I'm a content creator with Youtini. I recently published our Villains collection, and wow, there are some great stories in the expanded universe about your favorite bad guys. My personal favorite? Delilah S. Dawson's Phasma, which gives you all the backstory you could ever want about the sequel trilogy's shiny new antagonist. I won't go into detail about why Captain Phasma is the best villain in the Star Wars galaxy. Matt would cut it all out anyway.
So good to have you back.
I have a lot of feelings about Phasma. But anyway, if there's a Star Wars villain you love, there's probably a cool story about them you've never heard before. So head on over to Youtini.com to check out the list of books we've put together for your reading pleasure. And read Phasma. It's great. And so is she. You're listening to The Living Force, and as always, may the Force be with you.
And we're back, and I am a changed man. That honesty...
Because you peed? Or
because I listened to that clip, man, and maybe I peed, maybe I feel better. Don't shame me for my body's needs, Corey.
Yes.
But we are back, and we are going to talk about our foundational 5 books. Now, Corey, can you tell our fine listeners what the foundational 5 is, why you had the idea to do it in the first place, kind of how that all came about over at Youtini? Why do we think this is important?
Yeah, totally. So you guys have heard us talk a lot about like how there are various opinions in Star Wars about what books are good, what books are not good. Like, we've had critical things to say about a lot of books. We've had really positive things to say about a lot of books. Like, I hated Queen Shadow. Eric loves Queen Shadow. Like, we have such differing opinions on what is a good book. So we had a sort of big conversation as a team, not just the 3 of us. Youtini's a much bigger team. There's probably 25-ish. I don't know. There's a large team. We had a really big conversation, not about what are the best books in Star Wars, but what books should you read first if you've never read a Star Wars book before. And we put a lot of thought into sort of like how to even make that decision well before we even started throwing out books. And we kind of arrived on like a lot of criteria, right? One of the criteria, I don't remember, I don't have a written thing in front of me, but it's because it's been a long time since we've had this conversation, but I do remember thinking about some specific things like how entertaining is the book, how much prior knowledge of Star Wars Expanded Universe do you need to read this book? Because that's a big problem. Like, I've talked about picking up the 9th book in a long series to read for the first time.
Yeah, not everyone's a Corey when they jump in.
Right, it sucked, and it kind of ruined the experience for me in a lot of ways. So, like, how much knowledge do you need? How important is the book for the big picture? Because, like, you don't want to read a book that, like, you find it's your favorite book ever, it has nothing to do with anything, and, like, it doesn't even count anymore, right? So, like, how important is it? It's entertainment. The writing style is easy to read. Also, like, the characters, are these important characters for sort of the grand Skywalker saga, if you will? Right, so we kind of really put a lot of thought into what makes a good book to read first, right? And then we arrived on these 5 books. We wanted to keep it really short too. That was the other thing. Is like there was a lot of thoughts of like how many books do you want? Do you want the top 20? Do you want the top 10? And we decided on like this is the absolute 5. So if you have not read these 5 books, you should read them first. And if you don't like Star Wars books after you've read these 5 books, then quit now because this is like. This is the best introduction, I think.
Exactly, and we're going to go through each of these 5, and I also want to state there's no particular order, right? This isn't first, second, third, fourth. These are...
Right.
If you want to take the vibe of one, then you'll probably like this part of Star Wars. The vibe of another, you'll like this part of Star Wars, etc. So there's a mixture of canon and legends. There's a mixture of narrative stories versus character-driven stories. So for this episode, we're going to go through each of these 5. We're going to say, why is it important? Do we personally like them? Because, I'll be honest, we like these books generally, but we all have our favorites. So we wanted to make sure there was no personal bias involved in these books when we first decided on this list. And then, where should you go after you read these books? Let's start it right out. Our number 1, again, no particular order, but it's number 1. Our first book is Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. We talked a lot about this book already this episode because so many people have it in their top 3, right? And for great reason. Elevator pitch on this book, it's kind of a love story between 2 starting out as kids on this backwater planet, and they grow up in the Empire and then discover how they feel about the Empire, how they feel about the Rebellion, and it all takes place in the backdrop of some of the major events in the original trilogy. And you get to see their relationship evolve, you get to see the big moments of Star Wars kind of as you've never seen them before, and I think that's honestly, guys, why I think it's so important. Because it's basically like watching the original trilogy, but you have a different camera, right?
Yeah, my elevator pitch for this, because I honestly think I've given the elevator pitch for Lost Stars more than I have literally any other book in talking about Star Wars. Because, like, you know, you meet people through work and out and about and make friends and stuff. And, like, people find out that I'm doing this whole Star Wars thing. And I get a lot of questions, like, what book should I read first if I've never read Star Wars books? And you get a lot of that sort of, you know, I'm kind of a closeted nerd. I don't really want to be like too enthusiastic.
Right.
But they do actually want real advice about what book they should read first. So I give them this elevator pitch. So Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. It's surprisingly a young adult novel. It's not an adult novel. It doesn't feel like a young adult novel. That doesn't mean that it's written for young adults. It's not necessarily what young adult means. It's an independent book. So this is the only time it's the only single story that it exists around, right? Like, there's not a trilogy, it's not in a series, it's just a standalone book. And it has sort of everything that a really great Star Wars book has, right? It has action and adventure, it's got a little bit of a romance going. You get sort of a Harry Potter vibe, it's not the right thing, but people are really interested in like adolescence and like learning about yourself and getting older. So the characters start off as kids in the book, and they become adults through the whole story. And that's so much fun to read about, and it also has little subtle touches to the films in various ways. Like there are specific scenes. If you're pretty familiar, I don't want to give any spoilers because this is like, you know, if I'm going to be referring to this episode probably in the future of saying, hey, go listen to this episode if you want to get into Star Wars books. But like, if you're pretty familiar with the films, like, there are scenes that are in this book that are referenced, that are like, oh, that's how that's done, or that's how that little touch is explained, and that is so much fun. That's like one of the most fun things about the expanded universe, because they do tie into the films in really subtle ways, and it's really fun to read about. And yeah, this is kind of the book that put Claudia Gray on the map too. Isn't Lost Stars the first one that she wrote
for Star Wars? Yeah,
for sure. The first one for Star Wars that she wrote. So yeah, Lost Stars is great. It's not too bad of a read. It's pretty short. I mean, it's great.
Charles,
I think the best way that I can describe Lost Stars and why it's special and why it belongs in the Foundational Five is that it's both new and familiar. So a lot of times when you think about a Star Wars book, you think about like, oh, so that's about Luke Skywalker, right? It's like, well, no, this one actually isn't about Luke Skywalker. It's about these people that you don't even know. And despite that fact, it still feels so much like Star Wars. And a part of that is exactly what you touched on, Corey, that, yeah, there are little nods and big things that happen in the films are referenced and seen in the book as well from a different angle, but it's also just familiar in the sense of what the entire point of young adult novels is, which is what you talked about as well, Corey. Like, growing up and experiencing, going through changes, crossing the threshold, as it were, that is what we watch Luke Skywalker do in A New Hope. And so we get to watch the same type of journey for two different people at the same time and see how maybe they come to similar or different conclusions that Luke did. So it's entirely new, which is a ton of fun, but it also just still feels like what we know and love.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a perfect Star Wars book.
I don't think I've ever. It really is. I don't think I've heard a single legitimate criticism of the book. I mean, there's stupid criticism of the book, but there are no sort of legitimate criticism of this book, of like, it doesn't matter or it doesn't fit into canon or anything like that. Like, it really is probably. I don't think I'm too far out of line to say that it might be the best. Actually, you know what? It probably is the best of all the new canon books that have been written so far. And it came very, very early after the Disney acquisition, which is one of the most fascinating.
I think it helps, too, that it was out of the blue.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Because, like, you're right, man.
You have no time to build up expectations for it. It means you can't be let down. It is just a pleasant surprise all the way around.
Yeah. Totally. Now, one thing I want to add on the end of this book before we get to the next one is if people like Lost Stars, where should they go next? What should they read next? And I'll start us off because when I read Lost Stars, I immediately wanted more of this kind of book. I wanted more Claudia Gray. I wanted more adolescence. So for me, it's so obvious that after Lost Stars, nowadays, you should read Leia, Princess of Alderaan. I think that you get another adolescent story. It's written by Claudia Gray, but it gets you a little more into the familiar characters. You get Leia, you get Bail, you get Holdo. You start to say, okay, I'm going to wade a little deeper into these waters of known characters, known canon. And then, man, if you think the Alderaan explosion hits you hard in episode 4 to start, like, you read this book and you know the people that were there. So Leia, Princess of Alderaan, 100% my pick.
I was actually going to say like two groups of books that you should kind of go off of, and Eric, you actually hit both groups perfectly. Either Claudia Gray books in general, because she's such a superstar, or young adult books in general, because the young adult books have a track record that is way better than the adult canon books in canon. So basically anything else by Claudia Gray is fantastic. Master and Apprentice, Bloodline, it's all great. A lot of the young adult books are already great too. We've talked about them a little bit. Most Wanted, Ahsoka. There's a lot of really Princess.
Rebel Rising is really good.
Rebel Rising is really good. Yeah, the young adult books have a really good
character focused stories are huge in young adult. Charles, any agreements? Any additions?
I think you guys just wrapped it up. My answer was going to be Rebel Rising, so it's covered.
Yeah,
I think it's any young adult is fantastic.
That's something else I didn't really mention too that we also considered when we chose these books is, are they good sort of launching points? That was actually a really big decision, is are these good launching points into other Star Wars books, because they do fit nicely as sort of a beginning of lots of different cool stuff.
Yeah. Now our second book that we're going to talk about in this 5 is Darth Bane, Path of Destruction by Drew Karpyshyn, who was the writer of KOTOR. He's the writer of the Darth Bane trilogy. He wrote Revan. But Bane is kind of, as far as Star Wars books, his claim to fame. Darth Bane is a Legends story, first book in a trilogy, of a Sith Lord that created the rule of 2. There can only be one master, one apprentice, and this is the book that takes place thousands of years before the movies, so you get all brand new characters, brand new world, and it really gets you into the dark side mythos, because we wanted a book that, for the people that love Vader, you love Palpatine, but you want to know how it started, Bane is the gold standard, and you got to read this book first.
Yeah, totally. Charles, go ahead.
I think that what makes this book so cool is it's a great, as you mentioned, launching point for all of these books that are just about people that are bad to the bone. Like, I loved the Battlefront 2 campaign. I didn't have the same criticism that you might have, Corey, of I wanted to be evil. I wanted to be the Empire, and I didn't get to do that. Read this book. You get to do that. Darth Bane is evil incarnate, and it's fun. It's fun to just go to the dark side for a while. And there are other books that also give you that opportunity, certainly. But Darth Bane, Path of Destruction is probably one of the best at doing.
I think one of the fun things about Darth Bane, as opposed to what some people might consider its modern analog, Lord of the Sith, right? That's kind of like the main dark side book we got with Palpatine and Vader, ideally, is that Bane is really about the character and how he comes to the dark side, how he really embraces its power and how it changes him, whereas Lord of the Sith, I don't think ever quite gets there in such an intense way. And
oh yeah, totally.
And it's purely, I think it's way better written. So, yeah.
And Eric, I don't know if you mentioned this when we first started talking about this, but Darth Bane, Path of Destruction is the first of the Bane trilogy. So there are 3 books all about Darth Bane and his rise to power. They are absolutely phenomenal. I've talked about this on the show before. In the last 6 months or so, I listened to the Darth Bane trilogy again on audiobook, and I've never done it. And man, the audiobook is really good. And Drew really, I think it's it's not Matthew Stover. I don't think that. No, I'm sorry, not Matthew Stover. It's not
Mark Thompson that does it.
I think it's Jonathan.
He did a lot of the Legends books.
Yeah, I can't remember who the narrator is, but he really does capture Bane really, really well, and it's really great. And if you've ever played the KOTOR games too, so the Knights of the Old Republic's games, I don't know if a lot of people under the age of 18 right now have maybe
probably not
played that game, because we grew up with that. It came out in 2000 and something like that. Yeah, it's old. It's a pretty old game on Xbox originally, and this touches a lot of lore that's brought up in that book or in that game. That campaign, and it's really strong. Darth Bane is really,
and if you want to see the epic level dark side powers, that's also huge in this book. I mean, if you think that why doesn't Vader just go crazy and suck the life force out of people? Bane has no limits that he won't go to, especially as you get later in the trilogy.
Thought bomb. 2 words.
And it is sick. Yeah, it is really, really sick, because it's not like he's so untouchable that he can't be defeated, because he gets his butt kicked a whole bunch of times, but he's just so flippin' powerful.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I'm gonna talk for all of us for if you like Path of Destruction, the next book you should read is Rule of Two, because it's a trilogy.
Yeah. The whole Bane trilogy. Yeah, if you like Darth Bane Path of Destruction, definitely read the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
That's kind of a gimme. We just didn't want to include the whole trilogy.
Yeah, they don't fall off.
We didn't like the
yeah,
first
they don't
one.
fall off in quality. That's a nice thing. The whole trilogy stays great.
They're all just as good. The only criticism I'll have to say about the Bane books is the art on the covers is atrocious.
It's real bad.
Okay. It is so bad. In fact, like there's like a lot of talk about when this book came out. There was like a bunch of there was like some contract issue with the artists, and they had to rush and get the art put together, and it's super ugly. Like
Rule of Two is the worst one by far.
Yes,
I think.
easily.
So
Dynasty of Evil's like fine.
Yes.
It's just tough because I hope in my bones that we get an anniversary edition like they did with Heir to the Empire, and it gets a brand new cover.
Please.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so like
right.
that'd be great.
So yeah,
great. So as far whereas you should go next after reading Darth Bane, read the rest of the trilogy. That's a gimme. There's a lot of really great sort of bad guy books too that are good. Or you said Lords of the Sith in canon is probably
it's not as good, but it's got the same general vibe. But I don't know. I read Lord of the Sith after I did Bane, and I gotta say I think Bane was so good that it tempered my enjoyment of that.
Yeah, Darth Plagueis might also be a good sort of bad guy Sith to kind of jump off of. Darth Plagueis gets thrown around as a book that I think a lot of people would give Darth Plagueis like a foundational book spot. Personally, I think that book is way too dense for anyone that's not read maybe 10 at least 10 books first before you read it.
We contemplated putting it in here, and that was the problem we had.
I'll say one last thing before we go on to the next one. If you like the Force lore stuff in Bane, I'd go to Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, honestly. Then you get it's light side, but it's very much Force lore. So
yeah, I could maybe see that. That might be a strong jump, but I could maybe see that.
All right. Our third book we want to talk about is, again, a book we have talked about on here ad nauseum. It is the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover. This guy possibly wrote the best just pure writing talent, the best book in Star Wars. As far as the prose goes, the sentence structure, how the chapters are put together, it is just a phenomenal novel. And I will say Revenge of the Sith is the best prequel pretty easily. It's still at the bottom of my Star Wars movie list as far as quality goes, but this novel makes you realize really what the story was, what the story is, and even if there's some filmmaking flaws, this makes that story heartbreaking and beautiful. So Matthew Stover elevated that movie beyond anything I could have ever imagined, and this is one of the only books that, as I was reading it, I was looking for light sources as I was walking around at night just to try to find a place where I could read half a page, because you are addicted to it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you're just now jumping into listening to The Living Force, like, you go back and listen to some of our older episodes. I've really been raving about this book a lot because I've been listening to the audiobook, and it's just occasionally I'll pick it back up. And Revenge of the Sith novelization, I think, is the best Star Wars book that's ever been written, by a good point margin. And it's so good. It's so good. It just perfectly captures Anakin and Padme and Obi-Wan like the film did not. And I've said that 1,000 times, and I'll keep saying it because the utter tragedy of their relationship is so beautiful in this book. And if that doesn't hook you on Star Wars books, I don't see what will.
Yeah, I've used it as a launching point. Yeah,
I think it's important that we have a novelization in our Foundational 5 too, just to introduce people to what that's like. And if you're going to choose any novelization, it has to be this one, just purely from a quality standpoint. I am super biased, Eric. Revenge of the Sith, that is by far the movie I've actually seen the most times of any Star Wars film. And it's very near and dear to my heart. It's very near the top of my list of all of them.
Awesome.
I kid you not. And this book just elevates that story even further. It's kind of another one of those new but familiar things. Much less than Lost Stars, but this book just turns the lens of the story a little bit. And you're right, it does a better job of characterizing everyone, but it shows you how all of these people, all of these heroes that you are so familiar to you as the viewer or the reader, it shows how the normal person in the galaxy looked at them. And it's a really interesting take.
Yeah.
It barely follows the film too. Is important to add. I mean, it's almost like if you've ever read the Harry Potter books, like sort of some of the last Harry Potter books were like barely like the films, and this is like that. I mean, the dialogue is completely different. The scenes are completely different. Like there's a loose structure that follows the film, but
if there's a way that you can re-experience something that is as near and dear to your heart that I'm sure the films are, if you're listening to this podcast, then why not go for it? And that's what this book did for me.
Yeah, and Matthew Stover has said, I believe, I heard it on a Sky Talkers podcast, they did an entire episode about this novelization. Matthew Stover said that when he was writing the novelization, anything he changed, any dialogue, was straight from Lucas. So it's all...
Oh yeah, this is the only single book that George Lucas personally edited out of everything that's ever been written. It's the only book.
Beyond incredible. Now, if you love this, as you should, because you're a human being that likes books... I would honestly suggest after Revenge of the Sith, if you want something that has a similar kind of feel, nothing is really like it. But I could stretch it and say Dark Disciple, actually, I think would fit pretty well because you get that prequel era stuff, you get the really hard relationship drama, and you get the acknowledgement of the depths of the dark side in that book as well. So I'm going to say Dark Disciple.
I was going to say the two film novelizations. The other two really good film novelizations are the Solo novelization is phenomenal. That was in your top 10, I think, Eric, wasn't it? And the Rogue One novelization.
I can't wait to read that. It's on my shelf.
I'm gonna the ones you guys have said are probably the best suggestions. I'm gonna throw in the Phantom Menace novelization too.
Ooh, yeah.
Just because it's prequel era and it is in a lot of ways very different than the film, and I think enhances the film as well.
Agreed, 100%. We did a full review on that, actually, at Youtini.com for the anniversary of The Phantom Menace. We put a new review of the whole novelization and said how good of a job Terry Brooks did with that.
Have you guys read the Attack of the Clones novelization?
I haven't. I own it. I haven't read it yet. It's R.A. Salvatore.
Really?
It's on my bookshelf. Yeah,
we should probably read that at some point. So then, it would be really funny if that was like a secret gem and like it was like better than both of them or something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah, we got 3 years till the 20th anniversary. We'll get to it.
Everybody does. Everybody does hate the Attack of the Clones movie more than any other.
We'll get there eventually.
That's the only other novel besides Vector Prime that R.A. Salvatore wrote.
Yeah.
So
I'll check it out. But for now, we have two more novels we want to get to that we have read. One is a novel we've alluded to, I don't know if we said by name in this episode, Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, which was honestly the book that started it all back in the 90s.
It does.
The entire 91, yeah. The entire expanded universe would not exist without this book. It's the first book that introduced Thrawn. It's the book that said, hey, after Return of the Jedi, here's what happens. And it kind of jump-started fandom in a way that can't really be replicated, honestly, and can't really be understated.
Yeah.
Because regardless of your personal feelings on the new Thrawn books, and even on these Thrawn books, just as a pure craft standpoint, the impact, I think, is why we had to have this in the 5.
Absolutely. If you were to put this out to the general public, like what 5 books should you read first? I would be willing to bet my entire life savings that Heir to the Empire would be on.
It'd be number one.
Everybody
it would
universally, be. It would be, yeah, because universally everyone agrees. Like for a very long time, the Heir to the Empire or the Thrawn trilogy, I should clarify, Heir to the Empire is the first of the Thrawn trilogy. There are 2 more books that come after Heir to the Empire, just like Darth Bane's. We have another trilogy that made it on this list. For the longest time, this trilogy was episode 7, 8, 9 for people.
Yeah,
because like it's got all the main characters, it's a huge galactic conflict, it's remnants of the Empire, and it's done. And Legends Thrawn is a little different than canon Thrawn, and he's tactical but in a different way. And if you're not as crazy about Thrawn as a character from Rebels or even the new books, I think the Heir to the Empire and the rest of the Thrawn trilogy are absolutely worth reading.
Yeah, I think what makes the original Thrawn trilogy so great is like the exact opposite of what makes Lost Stars so great. It's not how familiar it feels, it's how new it feels. And that was very important at the time. But I think it's still important now for people who are just coming to Star Wars books because you have to get familiar with new. Like you have to get comfortable with it. Because it's not necessarily always going to be, especially if you go into Legends books, it's not going to be what you know and love. It's going to be a little bit outside of that comfort zone, a little bit outside of that box. and that helps you to ultimately expand your universe. That's why, it is the expanded universe, and that's important for anyone listening to this podcast.
Absolutely. And like with Bane, if you liked this Thrawn novel, it's a whole trilogy, so you got to read Dark Force Rising next. But if you have read the whole Thrawn trilogy, it's kind of a cop-out still. I'd say read the canon Thrawn novel. I think that's where you got to go next.
I would say
it just
so.
Makes sense.
That is Thrawn's origin story, and it's very different than the next two books in the canon, quote-unquote, Thrawn trilogy. I would say that Heir to the Empire is also one of the best jumping points into Legends in general. I would say specifically Legends in general that takes place after Return of the Jedi. That's like most of Legends kind of actually sits right there in the after Return of the Jedi era. And this was a great transition into sort of the more nitty-gritty Legend stuff. Like, I personally don't love the New Jedi Order series. It's a 19-book series, but this has got all those characters in it, outside of the bad guys, obviously. But Luke and Mara Jade, all those characters are all in the New Jedi Order series. The Legacy series is also a very long series, 9 books. That's what I got started with, and that takes place well after the Thrawn books. But some of the old Legend stuff, especially the big series that take place after Return of the Jedi, if you do want to start getting into Legends books, then the Thrawn trilogy is a great place to do that. But I would still say probably read our foundational books before you jump into a lot of that Legend stuff, because it gets really complex and nitty-gritty, and be sure you get into the right stuff first.
100%. Charles?
I'm going to go X-Wing series.
Ooh, sure.
Just because it's got the military feel.
Choice.
It also has a lot of the same characters. And, just Legends material has this quality to it that you can't really, like, put your finger on, but I refer to it as being Legendsy. Like, that's literally what I say. Like,
it's so true, man.
Yeah, you don't know.
Well, it's like old school cool.
Yeah, it is. It's like you can't really explain it, but once you've read a few Legends books, like, I promise you that will make sense to you.
Yeah,
and they're very similar.
This is going to sound negative, but it's the only way I can kind of think about to describe it. It's more big plot heavy than actual intimate character. If you want your big galactic adventures and things like that, Legends is so about that. There's a ton of characters, there's a ton of plot, there's a ton of things happening, whereas canon novels, I find, are a little more about what are the characters thinking, what are they going through in these kind of smaller adventures. So, whatever you want to do.
It's like old action cartoons.
Yes.
Like,
exactly.
Well, because if you think about what Legends books were initially doing, like, they were carrying the story forward, the entire thing. Like, they were the engine for the continued Star Wars story. And now that it's Disney and there's TV shows and there's new movies and there's all these things, the books have a little bit more room to breathe, and they can kind of be more of microscopic inspections of smaller periods of time and more character studies.
That's a fantastic point. And ironically enough, the last book we're going to talk about is a Legends book that is a character study. Which is,
and it's one of the greatest books ever written.
Exactly.
In Star Wars lore.
So, Charles, would you do us the honor of telling us all about Kenobi by John Jackson Miller to round out our foundational 5?
Yeah, so Kenobi, I mean, it essentially follows Obi-Wan from the time that he drops Luke off at the end of Revenge of the Sith to, essentially I can't remember exactly where it ends, but essentially later on, and you find out how much Obi-Wan had to do on Tatooine. He wasn't just an old guy living out in the desert. He was trying to be one, but in fact he was someone, that always wanted to help people and do what was right, and so he got sucked into all kinds of craziness on Tatooine involving the infamous Tusken Raiders.
Yeah. And it is a beautiful book about Obi-Wan, but also Obi-Wan doesn't really take center stage in this book a lot of the time. There's some brilliant new characters, and how I describe this book to people is it is a straight-up Western in Star Wars. And I know Star Wars has a lot of Western influences. There's a lot of homages to old Western movies and things like that in the saga. But Kenobi is literally man walks into a dusty town, and there's something else going on, and he's not going to get involved, but then he gets pulled in, and it's a really excellent novel that I think a lot of people are frankly hoping gets turned into a Disney Plus series. They could just take this novel straight up. Yeah. And I hate saying that because I think that's a cop-out a lot of the time, but it would really just work.
Yeah. It's one of those books that if you were to move it from Legends to canon would not really disturb the status quo.
Right.
Like there's really like no reason it couldn't be canon.
Agreed.
Yeah, Kenobi is really, really great. It's really funny. My wife has been reading Star Wars books the last year or two now, and I've really harped on her that she's got to read a foundation of books, and she's super rebellious. And if I tell her to do it,
well, naturally, yeah.
But so the last ones that she has to read are is Kenobi and the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And she just finished Kenobi, and like I was really funny because I was like working in the basement, like or redoing our house and stuff, and I can hear her listening to it on the speaker upstairs. I'm kind of listening to it too, and stuff happens. I can hear her go, "What?" like audibly reacting to listening to the audiobook upstairs.
I love that.
Then she's finally like, yeah, okay, you were right. Kenobi is amazing. So yeah, you got to read it. It's really, really good. And now with the Rebels tie-in with Kenobi in season 3, that one episode arc with Kenobi, it makes it special.
It really does.
Yeah. I don't think there was a scene that was more emotional for me than that scene in Rebels when we see old Ben Kenobi like. He sees the little silhouette of little boy Luke running across the farm. And
I can't wait to get to that point in my rewatch. I'm very excited.
Yeah, this really puts that into perspective. As far as what you should read next after reading Kenobi, that's kind of hard to say. I think sort of the Lone Ranger sort of books kind of fit that a little bit. Ahsoka.
I was gonna say Ahsoka. One. Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, Ahsoka's a good one. Maybe Rebel Rising even a little bit, even though she's less alone in that book. Yeah, but I
think it's a good one too. I think it's a good one for people that want to read books about other everymen in Star Wars. Like the people that aren't connected to the saga and you want to see what are their lives like, that's really what Kenobi gives you.
Yeah, if you, the last thing I'll say is if you like the sort of stuff that's happening on Tatooine, the couple sort of short stories books we have, like Tales of Jabba's Palace and Tales of Mos Eisley's Cantina. I don't know if you guys read those. Those are both very legendsy, kind of fit into the universe of Kenobi does a little bit, but that's a stretch.
I dig it though. Now, I've got a question for you guys before we wrap this up here. Those are our 5 foundational books. We all agreed on those, the whole team. It took us a while to figure those out. Definitely read those 5. Move on. Let us know where you go from this. Let us know what are in your foundational 5 books. But for Charles and Corey, if you had to add a 6th, personally, as of now, since we made this list, is there anything you'd put in additionally now, based on books you've read since then, based on a book that you wanted to get into but didn't quite make it, or based on where you think Star Wars books are kind of going at this point?
Master and Apprentice.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking about Master and Apprentice, but at the same time, like, I'm not sure it totally meets all the criteria we absolutely needed to meet to make it onto this list. Like,
that's true. This is my knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Master and Apprentice.
Like you have to understand the importance of Qui-Gon going into Master and Apprentice, which a lot of people I think kind of lose. You have to understand the importance of Dooku, I think, which a lot of people lose. So
I think though the interesting thing is I often try to think about how I would take moments in books and even entire books if I didn't have the story. And I think someone in our Discord said that they read Master and Apprentice before watching The Phantom Menace for the first time.
That's right, they did.
That someone said
really?
that.
Yeah.
And that really like sparked in me like how would you look at these characters if you did it the opposite way? And so I don't know that you would have to have background story on Qui-Gon. You would meet him in a very different way and maybe have a different opinion of him.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I could totally see that. If I were to put a book on this list, that would be on that. And Eric, what do you think?
I'd put Aftermath, honestly. But this is based on where I think Star Wars books are going now. I think that because it's a lot of new characters, it's post Return of the Jedi, and it is a lot of New Republic stuff. It's a lot of characters you meet in the new sequel trilogy, and it's adding in a lot of cool new types of characters, I think. And I think that
if that book did not get as much controversy as it did, and if there weren't so much opinionated kind of conversation about Wendig's writing style in that book, I would agree with you. And I really wish that it would have been received a little bit better, just because it sort of put the knife. How's that expression go? You put the knife in the, I don't know, like
the nail in the coffin.
Nail in the coffin.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Kind of put the nail in the coffin for
some Legends people.
For like larger multi-book series that are important for the grand story in canon, because we really don't have that, even with the Thrawn trilogy.
Oh, it's not a trilogy. I guarantee it. That'll come out on Friday. It's not a trilogy. There's no way.
there aren't multi-book series in canon the way there were in Legends, and I think Aftermath.
Well, Alphabet's going to try. I think it'll be interesting to see how that's taken. And I think ultimately, I think Aftermath Empire's End is the best. So that would technically be in the 5, but I think you got to read the first one to get there. All right, well, if you want more information about these books, head over to Youtini.com, check out our Foundational 5 books list, and while you're there, check out a bunch of other collections we got. We got collections on all kinds of characters and all kinds of authors, and if you find your niche, we'll try to have a collection about it so we can keep you reading, keep you getting more books, keep you in the conversation.
And what we are working on, sort of like a you guys heard us talk about it last episode, not an ideal reading order, but like this is sort of the tiers of quality and importance of book. We're kind of working on that sort of ranking system a little bit. So if you are extra lazy and you want us just to tell you what to read next, like that list is coming. It'll probably come out in the next couple of weeks.
Or you can hop on our Discord and say, hey, we have a whole channel called Get a Recommendation. So if you want to jump in there at Youtini.com/Discord, just ask, hey, what should I read? And we'll try to help you out. But guys, I think that's it. I think we did it. We talked about our Foundational 5. We talked about our thoughts on Thrawn Treason. Again, keep your eyes out on Youtini.com tomorrow for the full spoiler-filled review on the latest in Timothy Zahn's Thrawn. I was going to say trilogy, but sequence?
Series.
Books?
Series.
There it is.
I don't know. I'm still uncertain of whether or not
loosely joined books.
Exactly. Oh, but that will officially now do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you are new to this show, please don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and tune in every single week to hear us at Youtini talk about the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Please do leave us a review on iTunes to help people find us, and head over to Youtini.com for reviews, articles, and comprehensive book profiles on every single story in the Star Wars galaxy. If you want your personal thoughts on the show, you can email us at livingforcepod@youtini.com or tweet at us at livingforcepod like everyone at the start of this show. Or you can join, as we said, our Youtini Discord community by going to youtini.com/Discord. You can find us personally on Twitter. I am at Eric Eilerson, Corey is at DocStarWarsMD, and Charles is at C. Henkel. A special thank you, as always, to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, especially this episode, Freddie, our producer, and Wes, our community manager. Thank you to Corey and Charles for podcasting with me, and as always, may the Force be with you.
There is no hatred. There is joy. There is no division. There is union. There is no apathy. There is passion. There is no gatekeeping. There is community. This is the Youtini Star Wars Fan Code. Embrace it, live by it, and above all, trust in the living force. That's all for this week. Join our community and surround yourself with like-minded fans by visiting us online at Youtini.com. Until next time, may the force be with you.